Hello, I'm your host Jim McLean. Welcome to the latest episode of the Pantaflix Movie Review Show here on NvTv. Let's see what movies we'll be looking at tonight. We'll be reviewing Michael Bay's Ambulance, which is out in cinemas now. Our pick of the streams is Deep Water, starring Ben Affleck and Ana de Armas, which is available on Amazon Prime now. And we'll wrap up with our DVD of the week, Lamb, starring Noomi Rapace, which is available to buy now. So that's what we've lined up for you in this week's show, and joining me here in the studio on NvTv is local writer Maria McQuillan and blogger James Oliver. Hi you guys, we're going to be talking about 3 films this week as always, but before we do, I guess there's the small matter of this year's Academy Awards, the controversial Academy Awards, because I don't want to spend too much time talking about it, but yeah, you know, we were all shocked when Zack Snyder's film won the Popular Choice Award. Let's not pull on that thread, but James, I'll come to you first. I know we have the slap that was seen around the world. Let's not spend any time about that this week because it's been talked to death in the media, and I think it is overshadowed, I think, what has been a very progressive Academy Awards this year. So just generally your thoughts on this year's winners.
Yeah, it was, they were all very impressive winners. Of course, Jane Campion, not only the first ever woman to win Best Director, and the first ever woman to be nominated twice, I believe. You had Ariana DeBose taking home an Oscar for Best Supporting Actress in West Side Story, which was great to see. Jessica Chastain for Eyes of Tammy Faye, which is great to see. I haven't seen that film though. It is now on Disney Plus though, which is great. I'll be checking that out. And of course, Will Smith won for King Richard, which in itself is a great film. I really enjoyed that film. But of course, prior proceedings kind of tarnished that a bit. But overall, yeah, great, like you say, progressive Academy Awards. It's great to see. Troy Kutzer as well, now being the first deaf actor to have won an Academy Award. So yeah, overall, some fantastic choices were made, and I'm very happy to see them.
Yeah, I was really pleased with this year's winners. I mean, I think it's a sign that when we think back to Oscar So White, I can't remember, was that 3-4 years ago we had that? And it does feel like the Academy has made moves in the right direction. I know that they have been chasing TV ratings at the same time. Much has been talked about the fact that this year's awards would feature some awards not being given out live. We've seen Hans Zimmer reacting to that by not showing up to the awards and receiving his Academy Award for his work on Dune in his dressing gown, which I thought was great, harking back to last year when we had Sir Anthony Hopkins receiving his again in his dressing gown and during the COVID pandemic. But I enjoyed it. Now, you talked about films that you hadn't had a chance to see. I guess that brings us obviously to Coda, which is this year's Best Picture. I think has been seen as a late runner. Ultimately, I think it won 3 awards on the night. It won Best Feature, Best Supporting Actor, and Best Adapted Screenplay. I have seen Coda on Apple TV. I'm foolish enough to just keep paying for another subscription after another subscription. But Maria, we were all kind of talking about this before we started to record the show. You haven't seen Coda yet, but has this tempted you to maybe take out a subscription for Apple TV Plus?
I think that's what I find so annoying about this year's Academy Awards was pretty much all of the best films you could not see in the cinema. You really did have to have about 3 or 4 different subscription services to watch them all, which I refuse to pay for. But Coda would definitely be the one that would make me get Apple TV, because I do. That's probably the one out of all of them that I hadn't seen that I wanted to see the most, and it was really, really annoying that I couldn't see it unless I had the subscription. And to be honest, Jessica Chastain didn't go to the red carpet. She went to the awards so that she could see the technical awards being given out as her own kind of protest. And again, I was going to see the Eyes of Tammy Faye. I doubly want to see it now because I was like, that's such a classy move.
Yeah, it's a great performance. I will say this, I wasn't a massive fan of the film, but I would have liked to have seen Lady Gaga up for an award in that category. And I think Lady Gaga continues just to win me over now with that lovely little sequence between herself and Liza Minnelli as they were giving out the Best Feature Award when she just turns to her off mic. It's not there for fame, it's not there for a bit of kind of pandering, but it's just, I got you to Liza Minnelli, and I think everybody just kind of felt a little bit, and everybody loves Lady Gaga a little bit more. But yeah, Jessica Chastain was great in that role, I have to say. But talking about films we didn't get a chance to see in the cinema. James, you work in this cinema, and I think, if I'm correct, this is now this cinema's most popular film, I think, overtaking possibly The Artist, I think, to date, or maybe it was A Parasite, I don't know. But our very own Sir Kenneth Branagh won for Best Original Screenplay for Belfast. So you, again, that, as someone who works in the QFT, that film has been so successful there. You must have been glad to see that film taking home an Academy Award on the night.
Of course, yeah, absolutely. I'm not the greatest fan of the film itself. It's an okay film, don't get me wrong. But yeah, it was very nice to see that, you know, our wee country getting represented at such a grand stage in front of such a widely received audience. And Kenneth Branagh was very humble. He didn't boast about it. He got up and he just made a really nice acceptance speech. And I can't exactly remember the quote that he ended it on, but it was something along the lines of, you know, for those who we've lost along the way in Belfast, and it was just really nice to see that. So yeah, I was quite happy with that there, that it won for Best Original Screenplay.
Maria, were you a fan of the film?
I haven't seen it yet, and it's one of those films that it's like, it gets to the point where you're like, I really should have seen this by now. I just haven't. And I actually really like a lot of his Shakespeare films, so I was always surprised that he didn't win for those rather than this. But it'll be interesting to see, watching it, why it has pipped all of those other films that he's made that have been just as successful.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I didn't expect it to win there. I liked the story behind Belfast and its late Academy Award run. I think there was a few critics who thought, a bit like Coda ultimately did, that Belfast might seal the Best Picture Award because it's a feel-good story in a year that has been a little bit doom and gloom, but ultimately I'm glad to see it taking home an award. Whether I think it's the best original screenplay from the past 12 months waits to be seen. I think on a technical point of view, I think Coda, as much as I love it, I think of the three of us, I'm the only one that has seen it yet. I mean, again, it's a feel-good film and I love what it's trying to do about representation, but I do think Power of the Dog as a piece of cinema is much more, would have been a much more worthy winner, but does not mean I'm not glad to see Coda winning. But one film that did do well on the night was Dune. I'll come to yourself first, Maria. I mean, have you seen Dune? Were you a fan of that film? Glad to see it taking home so many awards on the night?
I went to see it twice because I loved it so much. So I was really, like, it was the one I thought out of all of them that deserved to get all of those awards, because when you were watching it, it was such an immersive, incredible experience. I thought it was a bit of a shame that it didn't get more of a shoe in the bigger categories. Can I say that? Like the blockbuster categories. But I was just, to be honest, happy to see it do well, because I did think it might get, gazumped at the last moment.
Yeah, it's done well. I think it took home 6 on the night. James, were you a fan of Dune? Were you glad to see it taking home those technical awards, or would you rather see it have taken home silverware in the heavier hitting categories?
I thought it was absolutely phenomenal, and I love that it's just part one, and he made it not even knowing if part two would be greenlit at the time, which is even more phenomenal. It's a fantastic story. Yeah, I would have loved to have seen it, as you both said, be more recognised in the bigger categories. The fact that none of the cast were recognised in the actor-actresses categories, I thought was a bit of a snub. I think they all did really well, but certainly for taking home all the technical more awards, if you could put it, it's great to see. It totally very well deserving of it. So yeah.
Okay, we are going to move on, but just before we do, I did open in jest by talking about the controversy about this year's Academy Awards. We all know the controversial factor, the fact that we had Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead taking home the Popular Choice Award. Just generally, your thoughts on that? I'll start with you, James. Your thoughts on this idea of this new category voted for by the public via Twitter to see what they think should be the winner of the Popular Vote Award.
Didn't agree with it at all. Spider-Man No Way Home. Does it even need to be said? Should have totally taken that home. Army of the Dead, it's fun, sure, but it's just not really enjoyable. Zack Snyder's already done zombies far better than this with his Dawn of the Dead remake. So, and the top 5 even, or top 10, you had Cinderella and all in there. And I was like, there's people missed like half of these. There's bigger and better things to me personally that I enjoyed more. I really would have expected Spider-Man to take that spot, but alas, wasn't to be. So
Yeah, it's not a film I'm a huge fan of. I'm not a huge fan of Zack Snyder. Just look back in previous episodes to see where my thoughts lie on him as a filmmaker. But Maria, do you think this is a way for the Academy Awards to find that sense of relevancy that they seem to be striving for so hard at the minute? Do you think this Popular Choice Award is the way forward?
I think the fact that they're not actually giving an Oscar shows how much that they actually care about it. It is very tokenistic at its core, and to be honest, I find it hugely ironic that it was won by a film that how many people actually saw. Like it was a group of dedicated fans that like voted it in, because I think you could vote up to 20 times a day. So you know, you can see where like how these, like Cinderella, which again not a huge film that came out, how they were in contention for the popular film category, which, as you say, like the film that saved cinema was Spider-Man. So yeah, I found it hugely funny, but a little bit sad.
Okay, well look, we're going to have to leave it there, and I think, as any movie review show should do, I think let's get down to business and let's review some movies.
Get out! The sky is gray.
What do you want?
Just gonna borrow it.
I got a cop shot. I gotta get him to the hospital.
I'm gonna need you to help us. Why don't you help us?
We're doing hostages now.
We're not crashing into this ambulance. We got a brother cop on board.
Do you have EMT experience?
Combat triage.
You're a soldier.
Yeah.
We are trying to save you.
California dream.
Hey! Don't you move!
Crash, bang, wallop, rinse, repeat. Yes, it's Michael Bay. He's back in cinemas. He's here to save it. We've already talked about Spider-Man saving cinema, but Michael Bay is here to deliver Bayhem once again with Ambulance. So, James, we've seen the trailer. What did you think of the film?
I loved it. This is just your prime time Saturday night, action flick that I haven't seen in so long, and it was great to see. Michael Bay, yeah, you said it yourself, Crash, Bang, Wallop. It's Michael Bay just blowing stuff up. Reminded me quite a lot of Michael Mann's Heat, essentially, in that nowhere near as perfected now, as everyone knows I love that film, but certainly just very entertaining, and it's Jake Gyllenhaal. The man can do no wrong in my eyes, so yeah, absolutely loved it, thoroughly enjoyed it, has some great sequences in it. What more do you want?
Well, I don't know if I can necessarily agree with you. I am not a huge fan of Michael Bay. I know I said kind of when we were talking the Academy Awards, I'm not a massive fan of Zack Snyder. This is the Michael Bay film for quite some time I've probably hated the least. I'm not a fan of Six Underground, which is on Netflix. It was just a dud. We were talking about Ryan Reynolds with Netflix and a series of duds I think he's done for the streaming service. I don't know. This film is what, 2 hours, 14 minutes? Over 2 hours long. There is no need for it to be that long. I think this film, for all of Michael Bay's attempts to create tension, there's a sequence in this where we see surgery being done in the back of the ambulance while someone's on the phone to someone who's on a golf course and they're talking through what to do. There is a complete lack of tension. For me, I never found this film being tense, and Michael Bay's attempt to create tension is by quick edits and parallel editing and camera change to here, camera change to there. There's so much drone footage in this film. But I just find myself going, it's 2 hours, 14 minutes. This should have been a lean and mean 90-minute feature, and it would have been much more tense. You have two cracking actors. We have Jake Gyllenhaal, who I absolutely adore, and we have Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, who was in Candyman, and I think he was in the Watchmen TV series on HBO. Two great performers I absolutely love, but there's just a lack of a really good screenplay for me. I will say this, it's probably Bay's best film since The Rock, but I'm not a fan of him as a filmmaker. This film didn't do enough to win me over, but I think it's all right. Like you say, I could go to cinema on a Saturday night and watch this, but I have seen better action movies that have been trimmed down and much more efficient in what they want to do than this. But maybe I'm just on the wrong side of opinion this time. Maria, where are you going to weigh in?
I was a huge fan of this film. Like, I don't know what it was. I think I was watching it and I was reminded about all of the bonkers things that Michael Bay likes to do in his films. Like the bit where you have cameras and they're just like zooming around to then eventually meet with the point where it's like, oh, this car is going to jump over something and flip. And it just made me laugh. And that's probably not the reaction he wanted, but I enjoyed it because of it. And again, I absolutely love Jake Gyllenhaal. He's an actor who starts on an 80 and ends at 200 sometimes. And like there were scenes where he was just like yelling lines, which again made me laugh, but in a really good way. Like I really, really enjoyed the chemistry that the two, Yahya and Jake Gyllenhaal, had. I liked a lot about the film, not necessarily though for the right reasons, but it was everything I expected from a Michael Bay film and more.
I didn't enjoy it anywhere near as much as both of you have. I enjoyed it a hell of a lot more than I thought I would, because I have really got a real dislike for Michael Bay and all the tropes and all the cliches we see and expect from Michael Bay. They're all there. The car porn, the gun porn, everything, not gratuitous shot. It's less leery. It's probably the least leery Michael Bay film we've had in a long, long time. I just think, I've said this before, I don't think he's a fantastic filmmaker, but he is someone who knows how to deliver an action sequence. He knows the visual aesthetic of cinema, but as a director to direct a full 2-hour feature, he's not the man for the job for me. I was looking back, I think his last film that was under 2 hours long, taking away shorts and stuff and music videos, which he's done, was Bad Boys in 1995, which was just clocking in at a minute shy of 2 hours. Well, look, we shall have to leave it there. Clearly, I'm on the wrong side of opinion this week, but we will now move from the big screen to the small screen.
You want to tell me why you didn't come home last night?
Not really.
This isn't a game, Melinda.
It's always been a game. The truth is, if you were married to anyone else, you'd be so bored, you'd kill yourself.
So that's a look at Deep Water. Maria, I'm going to come to you first. So this is a sleazy erotic thriller by the godfather of sleazy erotic thrillers, with Adrian Lyne. He's back in cinema for quite some time. I think it's nearly 20 years since Unfaithful, I think his last film. We have Ben Affleck and Ana de Armas, and they're a couple with a bit of a complicated relationship. What do you think?
I thought this is the kind of comeback that a director should take as a reason to retire again. Like, it was unbelievably bad. Like, I think about 20 minutes in, I was like, I'm so bored. This is such a bad film. Speaking of bloated movies, like, this one was like, so I could rant for hours about how much I hated this film. Like, I thought it was sleazy, I thought it was boring, and for a thriller, like, the fact that it didn't have any kind of a plot that even had me going like, okay, well, I want to see, you know, like, did he kill the guy or not? And it was like, no, like, it was really obvious, I think, far too early on what the outcome was going to be. And yeah, I absolutely despise the film. I'll never watch it again if I could help it.
I didn't hate this film, didn't like it, and I think there's a big difference in that. I am a fan of the erotic thriller genre. That's not just because I'm a sleazy guy, but I always think that they have interesting things to say. The erotic thriller genre has interesting things to do with gender portrayal and kind of looking within that. There's none of that here. It's not sleazy enough, it's not edgy enough. We have a solid A-list cast here, and you know, you've given them basically, you've given them the phone book to read. There's not much in terms of the screenplay going on. There's a lot of stuff with snails, and it's there, and it's hinted at as a plot point and why it might be an interesting plot point, but there's nothing to do with the grand scheme of things. I didn't enjoy this. I was disappointed by it. I would still recommend, you were talking to me, you thought it was sleazy. I should show you a lot of erotic thrillers, Maria, that would give this a run for its money. There could have been interesting things they could have explored with this. I mean, we have, to an extent, we have Ben Affleck's character almost as a cuckold kind of esque character in this role with his relationship with his wife. There's all lots of interesting things this film could have done. It wasn't a case that did he or did he not do it. I didn't care if he did it. And Deepwater, it was dull as dishwater. But that's me. James, what about you?
I actually find it quite intriguing. Certainly got off to a slow start. Absolutely. I kind of find myself checking my phone for quite a bit of the first hour because I was like, there's nothing happening here. Did still leave quite a lot of questions though to be answered. Stuff like you said, the snails. It focuses so heavily on his like almost meticulous kind of routine he has with them, and that goes nowhere. By the end of it, I thought it wrapped up rather nicely. We had quite a nice little finale sequence, sort of. But I wouldn't say I felt I wasted my time on it, but I certainly feel it could have delivered a lot more.
Yeah, as I say, I'm going to come back to you, Maria. I mean, you weren't a fan of this. You weren't a fan of this film's sleaziness. Would you be a fan, or would you find yourself tuning in to watch an erotic thriller? Like,
I think that was the thing, was like this. I can't say that I've never watched a film like this before because of like stuff like Fatal Attraction and that. And I think that was what was so disappointing about watching it, was you're supposed to have this like femme fatale character, like someone, a dangerous, sexy woman essentially. And the problem is that like I just didn't get that vibe at all from Ana de Armas's character. Like she was just there. It was very passive. I mean, occasionally she'll say something to Ben Affleck, but like he was the only character with any kind of proper agency in the film. And I think that's what I found so boring. And even in that sense as well, like you were saying about the snails, like there was so much stuff that you were just kind of like, it's so convenient to the plot that like he has all this free time because he created a microchip that makes him a millionaire or whatever. And then there was the whole like dynamic with the daughter, which I thought was totally wasted. Like there was anything that they started, they didn't follow through on. And I think that was the problem, was when I was watching it, I was like, I'm just not getting anything from this other than, when is this over?
Yeah, there's definitely much better erotic thrillers to watch. James, would this be a genre you would tune into? Honestly, no. Even the likes of the classics like Fatal Attraction, I've only ever watched, I think, like once, and it was a good lot of years ago. Not personally, no. To be honest, I didn't even get that from the trailer, that it was going that direction, until Amazon told me it's like erotic thriller. And I was like, oh, okay. It's not something I would generally tune into, out of, just curiosity or whatever. But I don't really know. It's just a weird film, it's just strange. Yeah, there's definitely better things out there. We will not include the 50 Shades movies within that. There are better films in there. There are films that do a lot of interesting things with the idea of the erotic thriller. And I come back to, they do have a history of doing interesting things with gender portrayal. But look, this is not going to be a classic, not by any means. I think we've talked enough about that. Let's move on and wrap up this week's show as we go from the streaming age to some physical media.
Dare keep up. Get the teeth.
So that's a look at the trailer for Lamb. I don't think there's much more we can really say about the film that the trailer hasn't already said. We have a couple living in isolation in Iceland, and then we have the emergence of Ada, a small child with human characteristics, but just happens to be a lamb as well. James, we'll start with you. Your thoughts on this film?
I enjoyed it. A24, so you should know by now with an A24 film exactly what you're going to get, and it delivered. This is weird. The human lamb hybrid. I actually thought watching the trailer was something as a metaphor for maybe her child's loss or something to do with that. And then I saw it and I was like, oh my God, nope, this is an actual hybrid creature that they've taken as their own. The first time I saw it, I was I laughed, and then I was like, I'm actually really creeped out by this. So, but I did enjoy it. I liked its kind of slow, methodical pace to it. I know on points, not really much, actually not at points for the majority of the film, not much really happens at all. But that's what A24 films for me are great at. It's building that suspense, even though nothing's actually happening. You just know something's coming that kind of fills you with dread. But yeah, overall, weird film, but I did enjoy this one, yeah.
Well, we will agree this week because I love this film. I genuinely love this film. I think it's Vladimir Jóhannsson, if I'm getting that correct. It's his feature debut. He's had this idea knocking around for a while. To talk about the idea is probably to go into much spoilerific detail for the film. What I loved about this, whilst you said, you know, it is an A24 project, so you know probably going in the type of film you're going to get. But this film, for all what some might see as horror tropings, it doesn't lean into the horror genre. It steers away from that, goes in a completely different direction. This is a film about love, it's about loss, about isolation, about coming, you know, a couple grieving. And when you look at that and you look at the subtext through it, yes, it is in other way. It is a film about a couple raising a small hybrid lamb and human child, but it's about so much more. And I loved it. I loved the score. I loved the visuals. I mean, I've only ever seen one other Icelandic film, and that was Ram. So they both had similar tones or similar themes in there. I genuinely mean, it'll be, when we do our film of the week, it's going to be no surprise. This film is going to be my film of the week. I loved it out of the 3 films we've seen. I've watched it and then watched it again. You know, it's out in DVD now, but it's also available on Mubi, which I think is where all 3 of us got to see this. I watched this and watched it again after watching it. I adored it. But what about you, Maria?
I was really surprised at how much I liked this film because I don't like horror or anything kind of like that at all. So I was slightly dreading watching this. And then like about 10, 15 minutes in, I was like, no, this is exactly the kind of level I enjoy because it's more suspense or like an uneasiness the way through the film because you're not really certain what's happening. And yeah, I was absolutely a big fan of the little lamb child trotting about in its little jumper and wee booties on. I thought like it was a genuinely really sweet film at parts because like whenever you've scenes where it's the husband and wife and their little child, like they're just going about enjoying their very rural, very isolated life together. And you're like, this is legitimately really sweet. And then the A24 part came in and I was like, oh wow, okay. But again, I was like, this is really, really well done. I also I went to Iceland a couple of years ago. So watching it again, I was like, I love this because this is the Iceland that you see whenever you go outside of Reykjavik. Like it's incredibly stark. Very it's extremely rural. It's extremely the vast landscapes, that are completely empty. I was like, brilliant film, loved it. We'll probably watch it again, surprisingly.
Yeah, I've already watched it a second time. I might even watch it a third. I could go see Ambulance again to see if I'm wrong, but no, I probably will watch Lamb. So I think that's largely a thumbs up from all 3 of us for our final film this week. So this is going to make an interesting aspect at the end of the show as we ask you both to pick your film of the week. I've put my cards out there. I've already said Lamb is my film of the week. I would recommend anybody seek it out. And it's an interesting thing that you raised, Maria. Whilst this is to an extent a horror film, it does go into the horror and fantasy tropes. It's not going to be a film that if you don't like the horror genre, I think you will find it still easy enough to watch, although there is that sense of suspense and impending dread, which is just masterfully done. But that's my film of the week for this week. James, I'll come to you. I guess I know what this is going to be. I might nod my head disapprovingly, but James, what is your film of the week?
Well, you'll be quite surprised by this. I would say Lamb also. Whilst Ambulance is that big budget blockbuster you can easily sit through, I love a good A24 film, and they haven't done a bad project yet. So this is something more that grips me, that makes me feel uneasy. You say the lamb's cute and run about in its booties. I say it's pure nightmare fuel. But no, I would have to say Lamb as well. I was really looking forward to seeing this one, and didn't catch it when we were screening it, but you offered the chance to watch it, and I was so excited and very happy with it. So yeah, I'm going to say Lamb as well.
Okay, I'm very proud of you, James. Maria, what about you?
It's also Lamb. Like, again, I think because it's the one that surprised me the most out of the 3 of them, I have to say it, because again, I really was not looking forward to watching it because I hate horror. And then when I was watching it, I was like, no, this is actually absolutely the kind of horror, if it is that right to describe it as that, that I would watch and did really, really enjoy.
Okay, so there you go, viewers. That's a first for this series, a 3 for 3 for Film of the Week. So look, that is us out of time. So all that's left for me to do now is thank my 2 guests here in the studio. So thank you very much, Maria.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you very much, James.
Thank you, Jim.
And thanks very much for watching at home. We'll be back next week with another episode. But for now, until then, Goodbye.